"Excuse me, sir. I'd like to check my account balance, please." The boy standing at the counter looked far too small for the cavernous marble lobby. 10 years old, wiry frame swallowed by a second-hand jacket, shoes worn thin at the soles. His voice barely rose above the hum of the bank, but it carried just enough for the manager to hear. Bradley Whitmore turned. His eyes skimmed the boy slowly, his clothes, his skin, his shoes, and a sharp, humorless laugh burst from his throat. "Check your account?" His voice bounced off the marble walls like a mockery. "This is First National Heritage Bank, not a charity hall for stray kids." He stepped closer, the chemical sweetness of his cologne failing to mask the bitterness of his sneer. "Look at you. You don't belong in a place like this." A security guard shifted, hand resting on his baton. Somewhere behind them, a man in a golf jacket called out, "Throw him out! He's ruining the air in here!" Laughter answered him ugly, effortless, the kind that came easily when it wasn't aimed at you. Wesley Brooks stood still. He didn't run or back away. Grandma Eleanor had taught him that dignity wasn't something people gave you, it was something you carried. "Sir," he said, voice trembling but intact, "I have an account here. My grandmother opened it for me before she passed. She left me this." He held out a worn brown envelope with both hands. Inside were her documents, her letter, his bank card. Bradley snatched it like it might contaminate him, flipping through the papers with a bored flick of his wrist. Then his eyes landed on the card, sleek, black, premium tier, the kind given only to clients whose portfolios made the bank lean in and listen. For a heartbeat, Bradley hesitated. Confusion flickered, then vanished beneath prejudice, hardened by habit. "And where did you steal this?" He held the card up as if it were evidence. "A kid from the projects with a platinum reserve card? You expect me to believe that?" "I didn't steal anything," Wesley whispered. "It's mine. My grandma." "Stop." Bradley tossed the card onto the counter. It skidded across the polished surface and came to rest at the edge. "I've been in banking 15 years. I know a scam when I see one. Sit over there." He pointed to the far corner of the lobby next to the janitor's closet, beside the bathroom entrance, the unofficial exile corner. "Don't move. Don't talk. I'll call headquarters and verify this little story of yours." Wesley obeyed. Head down, shoulders tight. He crossed the gleaming floor to the cold metal chair that seemed to shrink beneath him. Around him, the bank thrived laughter, chatter, polished shoes clicking by, but he sat invisible, erased. He pulled out Grandma Eleanor's letter, edges softened from countless readings. Her handwriting wavered, but the warmth within it never did. "My brave Wesley, never let anyone make you feel small. You are worth more than they will ever know." He read it again and again, as if the words might form a shield. His phone buzzed. A message from Uncle Lawrence. "Stuck in a meeting. Be there in 20 minutes. You're doing great, champ." He almost smiled, but the feeling dissolved quickly in the cold draft of the lobby. Minutes crept by. 15, 20, 25. Bradley helped a man in a golf polo open a new account. No suspicion, no questions, just handshakes and warmth. He laughed with Chelsea, the senior teller, as she brought him coffee. Both their gazes drifted toward Wesley now and then, followed by private smirks. A woman in a designer dress deposited thousands in minutes. She didn't spare the boy a glance. Only one person seemed uncertain, a woman named Diane Campbell. She hesitated, guilt pulsing faintly on her face, but in the end, she tightened her grip on her purse and walked out, heels clicking like small betrayals across the marble. Wesley unfolded his grandmother's letter again. The paper trembled in his hands. "You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and loved more than you know." He could almost hear her voice, soft, warm, gone. Another buzz. Uncle Lawrence again. "Meeting running long. 15 more minutes. Stay strong, champ." Wesley typed OK with shaking fingers, but said nothing about the mockery, the stares. Across the lobby, the security guard, Jerome, mid-50s, weary eyes watched everything. Watched the boy being humiliated. Watched himself doing nothing. Mortgage, college tuition, pension, survival. He looked away. Finally, after more than half an hour, Bradley's voice cut through the air. "You," he called, waving Wesley over. Not to the main counter, never there, but to a cramped desk tucked in the back corner, far from the comforts reserved for real customers. Wesley walked toward him, clutching the envelope. Bradley didn't touch the documents, didn't even look at them. "Let's try this again," he said coldly. "You claim you have an account here. You claim your grandmother left you money, yet you have no valid ID, no guardian, no proof of anything. And frankly, you don't look like someone who banks here." The words stung harder than the laughter. Wesley swallowed. "I have my school ID, and the letter, and the card with my name." Bradley picked up the school ID between two fingers like it was toxic. "A fifth-grade badge proves nothing. Any kid can get one." He flicked it back toward Wesley. "And where are your parents?" Wesley flinched as if struck. "I live with my uncle. He's coming. He's in a meeting." Bradley leaned back in his leather chair, amused. "Convenient, isn't it?" Chelsea appeared, whispered something that made Bradley's smirk widen. "I'm freezing this account pending investigation," he announced. Louder now, performing. "No funds will be released. Not today. Not ever." Wesley's breath caught. "You can't. That money, it's my grandma's. She worked her whole life." "Enough." Bradley stood and raised his voice so the entire lobby heard. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we must stay vigilant. People who don't belong here, trying to take what isn't theirs." Gasps, nods, silence. Wesley's vision blurred. He blinked hard. "My grandma was a teacher," he said, voice cracking. "She saved everything for me." "Spare me the sob story," Bradley snapped. Security escorted him out. Jerome approached slowly, the weight of his silence crushing him. Wesley rose before the guard could touch him. He pressed the letter to his chest, spine trembling but unbroken, and walked toward the doors. Bradley's voice followed him like poison. "Try a shelter next time. Might be more your style." Someone laughed a cruel, full noise. Wesley stepped outside, into the cold wind, alone. Inside, Bradley straightened his tie, satisfied. He had no idea how badly he had just miscalculated. Wesley lowered himself into the hard plastic chair, placing his grandmother's documents on the desk with deliberate care. Bradley didn't reach for them. He didn't even glance their way. "Let's try this again," he said, his tone flat and clinical, the voice of a man performing for security cameras, not speaking to a child. "You say you have an account with this bank. You say your grandmother left you money. Yet you have no proper ID, no guardian with you, no proof of address. And frankly, kid, you don't look like someone who belongs in an institution like this." Wesley's throat tightened. "I have my school ID, my grandma's letter, and the bank card with my name on it." Bradley picked up the school ID between two fingers, as though it were something sticky. Lincoln Elementary, 5th grade. He flicked it back onto the desk. It slid to the edge, wobbling before settling. "This proves nothing. Any child can get a school badge. Doesn't mean you've got money in our bank." He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "So, where are your parents?" The question hit like a fist. "My dad left before I was born," Wesley whispered. "My mom died when I was 3. I don't remember her." His fingers curled around the edge of the chair. "I live with my uncle." "And where," Bradley drawled, "is this mysterious uncle of yours?" "He's coming. He's in a meeting. An important one." Bradley leaned back in his leather chair, arms folding over his silk tie. Of course he is. Convenient. His smirk stretched. Let me guess, he's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company? That would explain why a 10-year-old in raggedy shoes is carrying a Platinum Reserve card. Must be nice having such a rich, powerful uncle. Before Wesley could respond, Chelsea appeared beside Bradley. She leaned down, whispered something into his ear. Both turned to look at Wesley, matching smirks, matching disdain. I don't know what kind of scam you and your so-called uncle are running, Bradley said, louder now, his voice meant for the audience behind him. But it won't work here. I'm freezing this account pending a full investigation. Wesley's eyes widened. You can't. That's my grandma's money. She saved her whole life. Your grandmother? Bradley repeated, dripping sarcasm. Right. The saintly teacher who supposedly left you a fortune. His gaze sharpened. Cruel. Tell me, kid, what did she really do? Rob a bank? Sell drugs? He shrugged. Something had to pay for that card. The words landed like poison, burning straight through the space where Wesley kept her memory safe. He felt something inside him fracture. Bradley rose from his chair, straightening his tie with theatrical calm. Then his voice boomed across the lobby, practiced and polished. Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies for the disruption. This is what we deal with every day. People who don't belong here, trying to take what isn't theirs. A few customers nodded, satisfied to have their assumptions confirmed. Others looked uneasy, but said nothing. Silence was easier than conscience. At the entrance, Diane Campbell stood stiff as a statue. She had reached her car minutes before, but couldn't turn the key. Something had dragged her back inside guilt, maybe, or a flicker of humanity she wasn't brave enough to act on earlier. Now, she watched, hands trembling, as the scene unfolded again from a new angle. I don't know where you stole that card, Bradley continued, pointing at Wesley, as if presenting a criminal to a jury. But you are not getting a single penny from this bank. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Wesley's vision blurred. He blinked hard. A voice inside him muttered, Boys, don't cry. But Grandma's voice pushed back, gentle as always. Boys feel, Wesley. Feeling is strength. My grandma worked 40 years, he said through cracked breath. She was a teacher at Lincoln Elementary. She saved everything for me. She prom. Spare me the sob story, Bradley snapped. Every con artist has a dead grandmother and a tragic tale. He turned to the entrance. Security. Escort this kid out of my bank. Now. Jerome didn't move. His feet felt bolted to the marble. 11 years of watching Bradley belittle anyone who didn't fit the mold. 11 years of saying nothing. Did you hear me? Bradley barked. I said now. Jerome walked forward, each step scraping off another layer of self-respect. He stopped in front of Wesley, hand extended, eyes averted. Wesley stood without taking the hand. He picked up his grandmother's letter, pressed it to his chest, and walked toward the door with as much dignity as a 10-year-old could carry. Bradley's voice chased him like a curse. Next time you want to beg for money, try a shelter or a street corner. Might be more your natural environment. The lobby stayed silent. Only the echo of Wesley's footsteps filled it. That's more your natural environment. Someone in the lobby laughed an ugly, genuine laugh, sharp enough to sting. Wesley didn't look back. He reached the exit just as his phone began to ring, Uncle Lawrence's name glowing across the screen. His hands trembled too much to grip it. The phone slipped, hit the marble, and cracked like something breaking inside him. Jerome bent down to pick it up. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Shame lived plainly in the security guard's face, raw, suffocating. The kind that came from recognizing yourself on the wrong side of a line. But shame wasn't rescue. Shame wasn't action. He handed Wesley the phone without a word. Wesley stepped through the automatic doors. They closed behind him with a soft hiss that felt final. Inside, Bradley tugged his tie straight, flashing a satisfied smile at Chelsea. "And that's how you handle it," he said, smugness dripping from every syllable. "Give these people an inch. They'll take everything." Chelsea nodded, but something uncomfortable twisted in her stomach. Bradley's phone buzzed a new email. "Urgent Q4 investor visit, preparation required." He glanced at it, dismissed it with a flick, and deleted it. He shouldn't have. Outside, November wind cut straight through Wesley's thin jacket. He found a stone bench in the parking lot and curled into himself, knees drawn tight, trying to make his small body smaller still. The brown envelope with Grandma Eleanor's documents rested beside him. The cracked phone lay in his lap. Her letter, now wrinkled and soft from his grip, was clenched in his fist. He stared down at his shoes, ragged, scuffed, the ones Bradley had mocked so easily. Grandma had bought them for $2 at a thrift store. He'd hated them once, embarrassed they weren't Nikes or Jordans. But Grandma had knelt to tie the laces, smiling up at him. "Shoes don't make the man, baby. Character does. And you've got more character in you than some people can dream of." She'd worn her own shoes until they dissolved, patching them with tape and glue until they couldn't be saved. Now he understood why. Every dollar she didn't spend on herself had been meant for him. Tears splattered onto the cracked phone screen. He didn't wipe them away. He tried calling Uncle Lawrence voicemail. He typed through blurred vision. "Uncle Lawrence, they kicked me out. They said I stole Grandma's card. They called me a thief." 1 minute passed. Nothing. Lawrence always silenced his phone in important meetings. Wesley had no one else to call, no one coming to help. He was alone. A woman in a business suit walked past. She'd clearly seen everything from inside, but she strode by as if he were a shadow on the pavement. A man jogging with his golden retriever approached. The dog slowed, curious, but the man yanked the leash sharply and hurried on. Cars came and went. Doors opened and closed. Not a single person stopped. Wesley unfolded his grandmother's letter again. The paper was damp with tears. "My brave Wesley, the world will sometimes be cruel. People will judge you by your shoes, your clothes, the color of your skin. But you are not worthless. You are my greatest treasure. Everything I saved is yours now. Use it to rise. And remember, dignity is not given, it is carried. Carry yours with pride, baby, always." He remembered her promise, made in their cramped kitchen over chocolate chip pancakes. "One day, Wesley," she had said, "you'll walk into that bank and they'll treat you like a king. They'll call you, sir." Today, they had called him a beggar, a thief, garbage. Inside, Diane Campbell hovered by the entrance, frozen in place. She had watched everything. The boy on the bench, the shaking shoulders, the way people stepped around him as if grief were contagious. She wanted to go to him, sit beside him, say something gentle, but guilt rooted her to the floor. What right did she have to comfort him when she'd stood silent as he was humiliated? Jerome watched too. His eyes kept drifting to the small figure outside. His chest felt too tight to breathe. 11 years ago, he had been that boy. Different bank, same wounds. "Extra verification for people like you." "Just doing my job, sir." Doors closing. Apartments suddenly unavailable. A lifetime of tiny corrosive cuts. And now he was wearing the uniform, enforcing the silence he once hated. He stepped toward the door. Maybe he could. "Jerome," Bradley's bark cracked across the lobby. "Stop daydreaming. Delivery at the back entrance. Handle it." Jerome hesitated 1 second, 2. Then he turned, walking toward the back. The moment collapsed behind him. Outside, Wesley stayed curled on the bench. But then the sound of an engine broke the stillness. A black Mercedes S-Class glided into the lot, polished and silent. It stopped near the entrance. The rear door opened. Lawrence Brooks stepped out. Tall, composed, silver threading his temples. His suit alone cost more than Bradley's monthly salary. Authority radiated from him, quietly, like gravity. He saw Wesley instantly, his nephew, his late sister's boy, the last living piece of his mother. Sitting alone in the cold, cheeks streaked, clutching a wrinkled letter. A muscle tightened in Lawrence's jaw. He walked straight to the bench, knelt to eye level. "Hey, champ," he said softly, voice warm in a way the last hour had not been. "I'm here now." Wesley looked up, and his face crumpled. "Uncle Lawrence." He fell into his uncle's arms, sobbing into the expensive fabric, staining it without meaning to. Lawrence didn't flinch, didn't care. He just held the boy who should never have been left alone in the first place. Lawrence didn't notice the ruined suit. He didn't care. He held his nephew close and steady, letting Wesley cry until the trembling left his small body. Only then did he cup the boy's shoulders. "Tell me what happened." And Wesley did every insult, every laugh, every word Bradley had thrown like stones. Lawrence listened without interrupting. His face stayed composed, but his eyes darkened, hardening with each detail until they were almost black. When Wesley finished, Lawrence rose slowly. His voice, when it came, was granite. "You did nothing wrong. Do you hear me? Nothing. None of this is your fault." He exhaled once, controlled, but they were wrong, and they're about to find out just how wrong. He took Wesley's hand and turned toward the bank. Wesley resisted, panic flashing across his face. "I don't want to go back in there," he whispered. "Please, Uncle Lawrence, please." Lawrence knelt again, so they were eye to eye. "I know, champ. It's scary. But sometimes we face the people who hurt us, not to fight, not to shout, but to show them they didn't break us. They don't get to win." His hand tightened reassuringly around Wesley's. "We walk in because they can't take your dignity unless you give it to them." Wesley looked at the glass doors, the same doors he'd walked through in shame not long before. Marble floors, bright lights, the echo of laughter that wasn't funny. He heard Grandma's voice in the back of his mind. "Dignity is not given, it is carried." "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." A second vehicle pulled into the lot, a luxury SUV with tinted windows. A tall, poised woman stepped out, her presence crisp and authoritative. Patricia Edwards, Regional Director of First National Heritage Bank. She had been on her way to a major investor meeting when her phone rang. Lawrence Brooks. 60 seconds. Calm, concise, devastating. She had turned her car around immediately. Now she approached with purposeful steps. "Mr. Brooks," she said, bowing her head slightly, "I cannot express how sorry I am. This is completely unacceptable." Lawrence's expression remained carved from stone. "We'll discuss acceptable inside. My nephew deserves an apology, and I want to see exactly who handled him." "Of course," Patricia replied. "Whatever you need." The three of them walked together toward the entrance. Lawrence, Patricia, Wesley. Wesley could feel his heart pounding in his ears. His legs felt unsteady, as if part of him still wanted to run. But another part bigger now kept moving. The last time he'd walked through those doors, he'd been thrown out like trash. Now he was walking back in with a regional director at his side and a man the bank couldn't afford to anger, guiding him by the hand. Something had shifted in the air. Wesley could feel it. The automatic doors slid open. Silence crashed through the lobby like a tidal wave. Every head turned. Bradley saw Patricia first, his face drained of color. Regional director, unannounced. Trouble. He hurried over. plastering on his most polished smile. "Miss Edwards! What a surprise! We weren't expecting you until—" "Plans changed," she said, her voice cold enough to freeze glass. Only then did Bradley notice the tall man beside her, and the child holding his hand. Recognition struck him like a physical blow. The black kid he had called a thief, a beggar, a con artist, standing beside someone powerful enough to end him. Patricia's voice carried across the lobby. "Allow me to introduce you to Lawrence Brooks, founder and CEO of Meridian Capital Holdings." The name detonated in Bradley's mind. Meridian Capital Holdings, the bank's largest institutional investor, 34% ownership. A man whose opinion could shape careers or end them with a single sentence. And he was holding hands with the boy Bradley had humiliated. "I believe you've already met my nephew," Lawrence said, stepping aside. Wesley stood there, eyes red, letter clutched tight against his chest, but he stood straighter now, chin lifted, shoulders square. Bradley's face flickered through disbelief, recognition, fear, until terror settled in his eyes. I didn't. If I had known who he was, That," Lawrence said mildly, "is exactly the problem, isn't it?" Across the lobby, Chelsea's pen slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the floor. Jerome, watching from the back, felt something long dormant shift inside his chest. Diane pressed both hands to her mouth, tears spilling freely. Every person in the lobby, the ones who laughed, the ones who stayed silent, the ones who looked away, was watching. And Lawrence stepped forward, each stride measured, calm, and devastating. A man who held power, but didn't need to raise his voice to wield it. Bradley stumbled backward until his spine struck the marble counter. There was nowhere left to retreat. "Mr. Whitmore." Lawrence didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The silence in the lobby did the work for him. "My nephew came here today to check his account balance. His grandmother, my mother, left him that money as his inheritance. It's legally his, every penny." His gaze sharpened. "Explain to me why he was denied service." Bradley's lips opened, then shut, then opened again, gasping like a man trying to breathe underwater. There were irregularities. We were just following standard protocol." "What irregularities?" Lawrence asked. Still calm, still controlled. That restraint made the question far more dangerous. "The account is documented, the funds verified. So what protocol justified treating a 10-year-old child like a criminal?" Bradley swallowed. "I didn't realize. If I had known who he was." "That," Lawrence said, stepping closer, "is exactly the problem." Bradley pressed himself against the counter as if he could sink into it and disappear. "You didn't know who he was," Lawrence continued, voice steady as iron. "So you decided he was nobody. You saw a black child in worn-out shoes and made a judgment not about policy, not about procedure, but about who deserved to be treated like a human being." The words struck with precise, devastating force. "My mother worked 40 years as an elementary school teacher," Lawrence said quietly. "She rode the bus until she was 70 because she refused to waste money on a car. She wore the same winter coat for 15 years. She ate store-brand groceries so she could save a little more each month." His tone remained soft, but it cut deeper than shouting ever could. "And if she had walked into this bank today, you would have treated her the same way, mocked her, humiliated her, thrown her out." Bradley had no defense, none that could survive the truth in front of him. "She deserved better," Lawrence finished. "Just like Wesley, just like anyone who walks through those doors." He turned to Patricia. "Before we discuss consequences, I want Mr. Whitmore to see something." Patricia nodded. Lawrence led Wesley to the main counter. Chelsea stood behind her computer. Color drained from her face. "Pull up my nephew's account," Lawrence said. "It was not a request. To FTO M. Tassens." Chelsea looked desperately at Patricia. Patricia gave a single nod. With trembling fingers, Chelsea typed. The loading bar crept across the screen. Everyone in the lobby held their breath. Then the balance appeared. $487,263. Nearly $500,000. 40 years of a teacher's salary. Every birthday envelope. Every tutoring session. Every sacrifice. All of it for Wesley. Bradley stared at the number. His skin went ashen. His mouth sagged open, but no sound emerged. Lawrence spoke quietly, and his voice traveled across the entire lobby. He laughed at your shoes, he said to Wesley. Then to Bradley. But he stopped laughing when he saw the balance. Bradley couldn't pull his eyes from the glowing numbers, as if trying to understand how the child he dismissed as trash held more wealth than the customers he worshipped. That, Lawrence said, pointing at the screen, is the money my mother saved over 40 years. She rode buses in the rain, so this boy could go to college someday. She wore secondhand clothes so he could have a future. She ate rice and beans for dinner so he would never go hungry. He let the weight of his words settle. And you almost stole that from him because of his shoes. Bradley finally found his voice. It came out cracked. I didn't know. If I had known there was that much money. And that, Lawrence said, voice turning colder than steel, is the real problem. You would have treated him differently if you knew he had money. Your respect has a price tag, but human dignity does not. He looked once more at the balance. Then, at Wesley. My mother told me something when I was young. A person who treats the waiter differently than the CEO has no character at all. His gaze locked on Bradley. Today, you showed your character, Mr. Whitmore, and everyone here saw it. Patricia stepped forward. Her heels struck the marble like a countdown. Bradley, she said, my office. Now. He didn't move. Bradley. Her tone snapped like ice. He blinked, looked at her, then at Lawrence, then at Wesley, the boy he had insulted, mocked, erased, the boy whose grandmother had trusted him with her life savings. 15 years of climbing the corporate ladder collapsed in front of him. I can explain, he whispered. You'll have that opportunity, Patricia said. In private. Now. She turned and walked toward the offices. Bradley followed, legs unsteady. Lawrence watched them disappear, then knelt beside Wesley again. You okay, champ? Wesley nodded, though his eyes stayed fixed on the screen. Grandma saved all that for me. Every single penny, Lawrence said. She opened the account the day you were born, added to it every month, never missed once, even when it was hard. But she never bought things for herself, Wesley whispered. Her apartment was tiny. That's what love looks like sometimes, Lawrence said gently. Sacrifice, choosing someone else's future over your own comfort. Wesley thought of the broken zipper on her coat, the TV that needed 5 minutes to warm up, the taped glasses, all the things she quietly lived without. I'm going to make her proud, he whispered. I promise. You already have, champ. Lawrence squeezed his shoulder. You already have. Patricia turned her laptop toward Bradley and pressed play. His own voice filled the room. His mocking laugh. His words calling Wesley a beggar. His threats to call security. His declaration that kids like him don't belong in real banks. Every insult. Every sneer. Every act of cruelty replayed on the screen. Impossible to deny. You violated 3 major company policies, Patricia said. Her tone cool and surgical. Racial and appearance-based discrimination, denial of service without legitimate cause, and falsification of official records. Bradley flinched. Falsification? Patricia pulled up a report. 23 minutes ago, you filed an incident claim stating that Wesley Brooks was aggressive, threatening, and refused to provide ID. She raised an eyebrow. The security footage shows the opposite. A polite 10-year-old boy asking about his account, and you humiliating him. I was protecting the bank's interests, Bradley stammered. No, Patricia said. You were protecting your prejudices. She closed the laptop, the click sounding like a verdict. Effective immediately, you are suspended without pay. Your Q4 bonus $35,000 is forfeited. HR will begin a full investigation tomorrow. And based on this footage, termination for cause is almost certain. Bradley's expression collapsed, as if something vital inside him had snapped. 15 years, he whispered. I gave this bank 15 years. And in 15 years, Patricia said, you should have learned that every customer deserves basic respect. She opened the door. Security will escort you for your personal belongings. Your access credentials have already been revoked. Bradley staggered to his feet. His gaze flicked to Lawrence, desperate for mercy. He found none. If he wasn't your nephew, Bradley choked out. You're right, Lawrence replied quietly, devastatingly. If he wasn't my nephew, he would have walked out with nothing, filed a complaint that would have been ignored, maybe called a lawyer who'd tell him it wasn't worth the fight. He paused, eyes hard. That's exactly the problem. He shouldn't need me to be treated like a human being. Bradley had no answer. He left his own office, past his own employees, through his own lobby for the last time. Chelsea Morrison was next. She sat trembling in the meeting room, mascara streaking down her face. She had whispered about Wesley. She had smirked at his humiliation. She had stood by. You didn't start this, Patricia said, but you participated. You reinforced Mr. Whitmore's behavior, and you failed to intervene when a child was being mistreated. I knew it was wrong, Chelsea whispered. I didn't want to cause trouble. I didn't want to be the one who... Silence is not neutral, Miss Morrison, Patricia said. Silence is a choice, and it has consequences. Chelsea received her punishment. Formal reprimand, mandatory training, a permanent note in her file, 0 tolerance going forward. She nodded through tears. She knew she was lucky to still have a job. Near the entrance, Jerome Davis stood after speaking with Lawrence. Not a formal meeting, just 2 men talking. You picked up his phone when he dropped it, Lawrence said. You handed it back. It wasn't enough, Jerome murmured. No, it wasn't. Lawrence didn't sugarcoat it, but it was something. A small kindness when he had none. Jerome's voice cracked. I should have done more. I should have said something. You should have, Lawrence agreed. The real question is, what will you do next time? Jerome thought of his mortgage, his kids, his pension. Then he thought of Wesley, 10 years old, crying alone on a cold bench. Next time, Jerome said quietly. I speak up, no matter what. Lawrence extended his hand. Jerome shook it. Not forgiveness, not absolution, but a vow, a promise to himself and to every person he might help in the future. Diane Campbell had waded through everything, the meetings, the fallout, the reckoning. She was still in the lobby when Lawrence and Wesley approached the exit. Wait, she called, her voice frayed. Please. They stopped. Diane walked toward them slowly, eyes swollen, hands shaking. I'm so sorry, she said, words spilling out in a rush. I was there. I saw everything. I should have said something. I should have defended you, but I stood there. Wesley looked at her, the woman who had watched him suffer and done nothing. He thought of Grandma Eleanor's words. Forgiveness isn't about them, baby. It's about setting yourself free. You came back, Wesley said softly. That matters. Diane broke into tears. I'm filing a complaint, a formal one, as a witness. Everything I saw, everything they said, it's all going on the record. Lawrence nodded. That takes courage. It takes less courage than your nephew showed today, Diane whispered. He stood there and took everything they threw at him. He didn't run. He didn't scream. He held himself with dignity. I don't know if I could have done that. Wesley swallowed hard. Thank you for coming back. Diane nodded shakily, wiped her eyes, and walked to customer service to file her complaint. One small act of courage. A beginning. Word spread through the bank like wildfire. By closing time, everyone knew. Bradley Whitmore, 15-year veteran, branch manager, terminated for cause. The official reason: violation of company policies. The whispered truth: something far uglier. People talked. He mocked a black kid, called him a beggar, threw him out. Turns out the kid's uncle owns a third of the bank. By the next morning, it was regional news. By the end of the week, national. The details about Wesley were kept private, but the story itself spread everywhere. Bank manager fired for discriminating against a child. Major investor intervenes. Corporate reckoning follows. Bradley Whitmore's termination was finalized within 72 hours. No severance. No recommendation letter. No benefits beyond what the law required. 15 years of work gone in 15 minutes. He applied to other banks. Everywhere he went, people had already heard. Eventually, the only job he could find was managing a check-cashing storefront in a strip mall 3 towns away. The kind of place he used to look down on. Some called it karma. Others called it justice. Bradley called it nothing. He didn't have the words. Chelsea Morrison kept her job barely. She completed every training module, arrived early, stayed late. Never smirked at another customer again. 6 months later, she requested a transfer. 6 months after that, she left banking completely and went back to school to become a social worker. She spent her days helping families navigate systems designed to shut them out, systems she had once enforced. The irony wasn't lost on her. Neither was the lesson. 3 weeks after the incident, Jerome Davis faced his first test. A young Hispanic woman approached the counter, nervous, hesitant, her English uncertain. A new teller, impatient and young, began sighing loudly, rolling his eyes, growing sharper with every minute. Jerome walked over. "Is there a problem here?" The teller started to explain, but Jerome cut him off. "This woman is a customer. She deserves patience and respect. Help her properly, or I'll find someone who can." The teller's eyes widened. He apologized. He helped her, truly helped her this time. Jerome returned to his post, heart pounding, hands trembling. He had spoken up. For the first time in 11 years, he had spoken up, and it felt like breathing after being underwater far too long. Patricia Edwards didn't stop with Bradley. Within 3 months, she launched sweeping reforms across the region. Mandatory bias training every employee. Every quarter, mandatory bias. New customer service protocols, every inquiry handled within 15 minutes, no exceptions. Mystery shoppers to test compliance. An anonymous reporting hotline for customers and staff. Zero tolerance for discrimination. A small plaque was mounted at every entrance. Every customer deserves respect. First National Heritage Bank. It wasn't revolutionary. It couldn't undo generations of inequity. But it was a beginning. A real one. Patricia made one more change, a personal one. She called Lawrence Brooks directly. "I want to do more than discipline bad behavior," she said. "I want to honor your mother's legacy. What would that look like?" Lawrence thought about it. Talked to Wesley. Talked to his memories of Eleanor. A week later, the announcement came. A scholarship. Named after Wesley's grandmother. Funded by the bank. Administered by a community foundation. 2 full-ride scholarships every year, tuition, books, living expenses, awarded to students from underserved communities pursuing degrees in education. Teachers creating future teachers. Eleanor Brooks' legacy multiplied. Wesley Brooks, 10 years old, would serve as a special advisor on the selection committee. When Lawrence told him, Wesley sat quietly for a long moment. They named it after Grandma. They did, Lawrence said. So her dream keeps living. She keeps helping kids, even though she's gone. Wesley looked at the framed photo on his dresser, Grandma Eleanor smiling in her worn coat and taped glasses. She would have cried, Wesley whispered. The happy kind. Lawrence swallowed. Yeah, he said softly. She would have. Wesley went to his closet and pulled out the worn-out sneakers, the ones Bradley had laughed at. He placed them on the shelf beside her photo. He would never throw them away. Never. 3 weeks after the incident, a video surfaced. Not from the bank's cameras, those were sealed. It came from a customer's phone. A young professional had recorded the scene that day. He'd planned to post it for laughs, drama at the bank, easy clicks, quick engagement. But then he watched the rest of the day unfold, watched Lawrence arrive, watched Bradley's downfall, watched justice taking shape, and something inside him twisted. Shame. He had stood there filming, laughing, entertained by a child's humiliation. What did that make him? He deleted the original video. But guilt stayed. 3 weeks later, he posted something else. His own face. His own confession. I was there that day. I watched a bank manager humiliate a 10-year-old black boy for wearing old shoes. I watched. I laughed. I filmed it like it was entertainment. I was wrong. I was part of the problem. That kid showed more courage than anyone in that lobby, including me, especially me. So if you ever see something like this, don't watch, don't film, don't laugh. Speak up. Silence makes you complicit. I learned that the hard way. Don't be like me. The video went viral. 3 million views in 5 days. Comments poured in. People shared their own stories, their own mistakes, their own promises to do better. A national conversation ignited about bias, about assumptions, about the judgments we make in a single glance. Wesley never saw the video. Lawrence made sure of that. The boy had endured enough, but the message spread anyway. One small act of honesty, one confession, millions of conversations. Change rarely arrives in a single thunderclap. It grows from quiet moments. This was one of them. 8 years later, Wesley Brooks walked across a sun-washed Georgetown campus. Freshman orientation. 18 now tall, confident, steady. A long way from the frightened 10-year-old who once stood trembling in a marble lobby, but not entirely different. He still carried his grandmother's letter, laminated and safe inside his wallet, close to his heart. And on the shelf in his dorm room sat a pair of worn-out sneakers, cracked soles, frayed laces, faded with time, preserved like something sacred. His new roommate pointed at them immediately. Bro, are those yours? They look like they've survived a war. Wesley smiled. They're the most valuable thing I own. Valuable? They look like they belong in the trash. Wesley picked them up gently, running his thumb along the cracked leather. My grandmother bought these for me when I was 10, $2 from a thrift store. She apologized because she couldn't afford better. He set the shoes back on the shelf. She saved $500,000 for my education. Wore the same coat for 15 years. Took the bus in the rain. Ate cheap food so I could have a future. He looked at his roommate. These shoes remind me that love isn't about what you have, it's about what you give. His roommate stared for a long moment. That's actually really beautiful, man. Wesley's voice softened. She was really beautiful. Lawrence Brooks continued running Meridian Capital, but he changed too. He built a mentorship program for young people from underserved communities. Paid internships, real opportunities, actual pathways forward. Talent is distributed equally, he told his board. Opportunity isn't. That part we can fix. The Eleanor Brooks Memorial Scholarship flourished. 14 recipients in 8 years, teachers, counselors, principals, each carrying Eleanor's legacy into classrooms she would never see. Jerome Davis retired from the bank 3 years after the incident. But he didn't disappear. He became a school resource officer. A different kind of security, one that protected instead of removed. Every time he defended a child, he thought of Wesley. Every time he spoke up, he honored the promise he'd made. He never stayed silent again. Not once. Diane Campbell joined the bank's Community Advisory Board. The woman who once stood frozen in a lobby became a voice for change. She visited schools, spoke to students about courage, about speaking up, about the cost of staying quiet. "I was a bystander once," she told them. "I stayed silent. I regret it every single day. Don't make my mistake." Chelsea Morrison found her redemption in social work. She spent her days helping families she once dismissed, aware every moment of how close she had come to becoming another Bradley. She never forgot Wesley, never forgot the line she almost crossed. As for Bradley Whitmore, no one knew for certain. Some said he moved to another state and changed his name. Some said he never recovered, drank himself into the margins of society. Some believed he tried to make amends quietly, volunteering at shelters. No one knew the truth. Maybe that was its own form of justice. Wesley stood in his dorm window, watching the sun drop behind the spires of Georgetown. Tomorrow, classes would begin. His future would open before him. He pulled out his grandmother's letter and read it once more, the words etched in him now. "My brave Wesley, never let anyone make you feel small. You are worth more than they will ever know. Dignity is not given, it is carried. Carry yours with pride." He had carried it through the worst day of his life, through growing up, through every step leading him here. His phone buzzed. "Uncle Lawrence, first day tomorrow. Nervous? Excited? Ready? Your grandma would be so proud of you." Wesley typed back, "I think about her every day. She's with you, Wesley. Always will be." They talked a little more. Then Wesley hung up. Orientation awaited. A future awaited. A legacy to honor. He grabbed his new backpack, expensive, thoughtful, a gift from Uncle Lawrence. But on his feet, he wore the old sneaker. The thrift store sneakers. The ones he saved for important days. Today felt like one. Wesley Brooks stepped out of his dorm room and into the beginning of his life, carrying his dignity with quiet pride just as Grandma Eleanor taught him. Respect is not a reward for success. It isn't earned by wealth or status. It's the baseline of humanity, the least we owe one another. Wesley Brooks never needed a powerful uncle to deserve decency. No one does. But on that day in the bank, he learned something important. Some people measure worth by your shoes. Others, by your wallet. A rare few measure it by your character. Be one of the rare ones. So let me leave you with this. One day, you might find yourself standing in a lobby, on a sidewalk, in a classroom, anywhere, watching someone being mistreated, judged, or humiliated. And in that moment, you'll face a choice. Who do you want to be? The one who laughed? The one who filmed? The one who looked away? Or the one who finally spoke up? That choice is yours. It has always been yours. And remember this: dignity isn't something people hand to you. It's something you carry. Carry it with pride, and whenever you can, help someone else carry theirs too. Because the world doesn't change through grand speeches or perfect people. It changes through small, ordinary acts of courage, multiplied by millions. If this story made you think of a moment you stayed silent, or a moment you spoke up, share it below. Your comment might be the nudge someone else needs. And if you want more stories that remind us who we are and who we could be, hit like, subscribe, and share this video. Not for me, but for the next Wesley, who walks into a room alone and needs someone brave enough to stand beside him. We can be those people. Let's choose to be.